My name is Mike, and I'm a person in long-term recovery, and this is Inside Addiction.
Mike, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Dean.
So let's get started. Tell me how it was growing up.
Well, for me, I grew up mostly single-family household. Mother and father divorced when I was 2. I lived with my mother in Hudson, New York, from the ages of 2 to 13. It's a fairly normal household. Most of my relatives, they drink to have fun, and so it was a big part of growing up. As I related alcohol and like smoking pot to like this is how adults have fun. So I think that was a big thing for me growing up, seeing that you're an adult when you're allowed to drink and when you can
Kind of like a rite of passage.
exactly.
Yeah.
So 2 to 13, pretty normal. I wasn't big on having many friends. I was kind of an introvert as a kid. I did a lot of, just spending time inside, games and reading and stuff like that. Not too many friends. Didn't really get involved in like organized sports or anything.
Do you have any brothers or sisters?
Yep, I have an older brother, an older sister, a younger brother, and a younger sister. My older sister is an active heroin addict. She's currently in jail right now. My older brother's an attorney. He's done very well for himself. And I have a younger brother and a younger sister that are both still in school.
How was school for you?
School for me was ordinary. I didn't participate much. I think I heard from maybe like 3rd, 4th grade all through high school was that, Mike, you're a real smart kid, but
Oh, doesn't apply himself?
doesn't apply himself.
I hated that.
You just don't apply yourself, and I think taking a look at like my self-worth back then, I really didn't believe what they said, that every teacher's got to say that to every student, that you're real smart, but you don't do shit.
How were your grades overall? I mean, were you ever held back? Did you have to repeat any grades?
I repeated 4th grade. I don't think that New York State, they can hold you back. It's kind of like a referral by the parent.
Gotcha.
My mother requested that I stay back, so I did. And the second time through, there was no problem. I retained information pretty well. That was never the problem. And looking back on it, it was, I didn't put any work into it. I never really applied myself in school. And had I, I think I would have done fairly well.
Right.
Most of my grades were, barely passing. It was D's and C's all throughout school. That was pretty much, my experience with school up until high school.
So junior high, nothing really sticks out?
Not too much with junior high, no. It wasn't until high school, when things really started to change for me. I moved after 7th grade to Pennsylvania.
Okay.
I lived down there with my father, who was a retired detective.
You say retired detective?
Yes.
So your brother's an attorney, and your father was a police officer?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, 20 years. He retired from the state of New Jersey. He's a detective in Ramapo. And very honest, very hardworking man. And when I moved in with him, things probably should have changed. Probably should have had more of a strict household, but it really wasn't the case. I feel like my father really wanted he wanted me to have the things that he felt that that I wanted for myself. I multiple times I'd go to him and say, like, I want to do football this year, I want to do baseball this year, and he would go out and he was great. He'd get me all the equipment and take me to the practices, and I'd go like 2 or 3 practices, and I'm like, okay, I'm done with this. It was pretty much a consistent stream throughout my entire childhood of not applying myself to do anything, and just not being consistent with anything.
So tell me about, how old were you the first time you used anything? And how did that come about? What were the circumstances surrounding that?
The actual first time that I can remember having a drink, I was 5. I didn't get drunk. I believe somebody gave me a beer at a family party. They thought it was funny. I think they gave my little sister a beer too. She was like 1. But the first time I used intentionally to get high, to get drunk, was 15 years old. I was a freshman in high school.
And you living with your dad at that point?
Yep. I was living with him, and like all the kids, I took some liquor out of the cabinet, went for the white liquor, it's matched with water pretty well, did whatever it was, 7 shots of rum, and
The first time you drank,
yeah.
you did 7 shots.
Yeah, I don't know where I got the number from. I think somebody had told me like it takes 7 shots to get drunk. So I was like, well, then it's gonna take me 7 shots to get drunk. So he actually had 7 shot glasses in the cabinet. So I filled up 7 shot glasses with rum and I chased it with like a Pepsi or something. And I got drunk, and it was a school night. I think it was like a Monday or Tuesday night, and it was the greatest experience. Like for me, it was the weight, the pressure, like social anxiety, everything just kind of went away for me when I was
No more
drunk.
introvert.
Exactly. I was, AOL Instant Messenger was still pretty big then, and I think I hopped online and I was on AOL Instant Messenger, and I'm telling all my lame high school friends how drunk I was and how cool it was, and it was a good time. I didn't really do anything stupid or crazy. I think I was just like playing around on the computer all night, and I told myself, like, this feels so great. I want to feel this all the time. And I actually set out to get drunk before school the next day.
Wow.
Yeah, so I could experience that during school, and that didn't work out well for me.
Why?
Well, I woke up hungover, and I figured it would be, that right before I leave to go to school would be the best time to down 7 more shots.
Yeah.
And I did that right as I got out of the shower, and then I threw up all over the place.
So 7 shots the night before, 7 shots the next morning. Did Dad ever, suspect anything at that point?
No, not for me. I mean, from the outside looking in, somebody probably would have said you might have a problem. But for me, I thought it was just these were normal things. Like, this is what every kid does.
Yeah, what grade was that again?
That was 9th grade.
So 15 years old, 9th grade, 7 shots before we go to school.
Mm-hmm.
So did that kind of subside a little bit? Was it kind of something you said, as soon as I felt that feeling, I thought, hey, I want to feel like this all the time. Did you get past that, or did you continue, drinking for a period of time when you were 15, or did you kind of lay off for a little bit?
The drinking subsided a little bit. I wasn't so much into the drinking at first. As a kid, I don't like the taste of it. And I think more than anything, it was the control aspect. Very controlling with every aspect of my life. So, from a conversation with family and friends to what I did on the day to day, what was going to happen tomorrow. I tried to control every single aspect of my life, and it's a very tiring. It's an exhausting thing to do, and I think that using drugs was kind of like an outlet for me, and so the next best thing other than alcohol for me was pot.
How old were you at that point?
I was 15.
So same year.
Same year.
Same year you first had a drink, you started smoking pot too.
Yep.
What was the period of time, the gap between those 7 shots the night before school to the point that you were smoking pot?
I really don't remember. Maybe 2 or 3 months.
Okay.
I drank for a little bit after that, not on a regular basis.
Right.
Maybe weekends would steal some liquor or whatever. But yeah, it quickly progressed to the pot.
So you start smoking pot.
Yep. When I smoked the pot, that was the greatest feeling that I had ever experienced.
Alcohol was nothing. I thought that was great. This is better than great.
Oh yeah, this was better because I wasn't getting sick. I was 10 times happier, and everything was just sunshine and rainbows, and it was all a good time. It's something me and my friends could partake in. You don't reek of alcohol.
Yeah, you just reek of weed then.
But it was the first time that I smoked pot. That's when I really said to myself, and I set out. It was my personal goal to never be sober.
Wow, at 15 years old.
At 15, yeah.
How did that start to affect school in any way, if it did?
I'm sure it did.
So we're still ninth grade?
Ninth grade, coming up on the end of ninth grade, that was April of ninth grade. I started smoking weed, and probably didn't affect much that year. You know, school was just about wrapping up, but it definitely carried into like that summer.
So the summer going into 10th grade.
The summer going into 10th grade, it was a lot of just partying with friends, you know, older kids, and smoking pot and drinking, you know, and then, you know, the smoking and the drinking went hand in hand. You know, it would be drinking when I'm with a crowd of people or a crowd of friends, and, you know, just smoking weed all the time.
So that continued for a period of time, and did it progress to what next?
Smoking weed and drinking carried on until I was about 17. At 17, I took prescription painkillers for the first time, and
Were you injured, or how were you introduced to prescription painkillers?
I was initially introduced to prescription painkillers through, you know, some associate of a friend.
Just somebody had it.
Somebody had it. Was like, hey, do you want to try this? You know, I did, and you know, I liked it. And when I felt that, it was, here I am again. You know, I like this feeling better than I like the alcohol, better than I like the weed. This is what I want to feel now. This is what I want to feel all the time for the rest of my life.
Right.
And it's kind of funny looking back on it now, but the group of people that I hung out with, when they noticed you starting to kind of fiend for like pills or anything, they'd say, what are you, a drug addict? You know, and like me, I'm trying to conform to be like everybody else. You know, I'm like, no, I'm not a drug addict, not at all. You know, and then I would lay off. That was enough for me to lay off for 2 or 3 days. But while everybody else was cool with not doing it, in my head it was, when are we gonna go get this next pill? When are we gonna go get more pills? That's all I could think about.
So you're 17 years old at that point, started doing pills, stopped smoking weed, stopped drinking, and just focus on pills at that point, or all three?
All three. You know, when I had the pills, when I was using the pills, smoking weed and drinking weren't really prevalent. It was just the pills. But throughout the years, it's all been everything, you know, all together, pretty much.
So the pills progressed to anything else, and at what age was that, and to what extent?
Yeah, you know, it started off with the low milligram Vicodin, and then Percocet and stuff like that. Stealing them out of family members' medicine cabinets and buying them on the street where I could. You know, and even at a young age, at 16, 17, like I had already started stealing from people to supply my pot habit, and then, you know, later on to supply the habit for pills. And burglarizing houses was huge when I was 17 and 18. I did a lot of that, and to supply that addiction. It eventually progressed to higher milligram pills, you know, the Roxys, the 30 milligrams, the OxyContin, and then that was pretty steady. It was steady for quite a few years. I ended up moving down to Florida with my father. A friend of mine in Pennsylvania had died senior year of high school, and that was kind of like, for me, I don't want to say an excuse, but I probably use it as an excuse to, you know, to fuel my addiction a little bit more. You know, I started spiraling down, really stopped listening to anybody's suggestions or anything they had to tell me. I was 18 now. You know, I used to say, I'm a grown-ass man. You're not going to tell me what I can and can't do. You know, looking back on it, like, I see kids that are 18 today, and I'm like, you're a kid, like, you know. But so we moved down to Florida to try and get away from all the craziness that I kind of created for myself. And you know, things only really got worse from there. You know, I brought myself with me, and ended up living with my father and my stepmother in Florida. I didn't like the rules. You know, my dad then tried to instill, like, you know, these are some rules you're gonna have. It's gonna be a little more strict down here, and I wasn't having it. So you know,
Because you're 18 and you're a grown ass man. at that
grown ass
point.
man, I can do whatever the fuck I want to do.
How'd you get introduced to heroin?
I got introduced to heroin when I moved back to New York State. It was actually after the first time I'd ever went to treatment
Okay.
that I got introduced to heroin.
So you went to treatment prior to getting introduced to heroin.
Yes.
So tell me about the progression of the pill use. Did it increase when you went to Florida?
The
Things
pill-
got worse.
Things got worse. The pill use didn't actually increase when I moved to Florida. The cocaine consumption skyrocketed down there.
Okay.
Ecstasy consumption skyrocketed down there. It was all cheap and very available. My drinking consumption skyrocketed when I was in Florida. I was drinking every day. I would wake up and drink throughout the day.
And you're 18 at this point.
Yep. 18 into 19. I ended up leaving my dad's house and moving into, a trap house, a gang house. There's a lot of gang activity, selling drugs, and
At that point, gang affiliated or just wrong place, wrong time?
I don't know. I don't like using the word affiliated.
I got you.
I
hear you.
I had friends. They were friends. They were associates. These were people. They were people, honestly, that for what my best interests were at the time, what I felt my best interests were, they were looking out for my best interests.
Almost became your family.
Oh yeah, absolutely. These felt like brothers to me. It was I felt it was a solid group of guys. We all looked out for each other, and for me that really meant who's got money for beer, who's got Coke, who's got this, who's got that. We get into a brawl somewhere. Who's got my back and whose back do I have? And I think that was probably the biggest reason why I was so accepted there. Is most of the time, my life was just fueled with like booze and narcotics when I was in Florida. So for me to just pop off on somebody and just get into a fight for really nothing serious, there wasn't anything. So they took that as like, look at this kid. This kid barely knows us, and he's willing to back us up. And I think that's why I was so accepted there. I was able to move up quickly there. I started off sleeping on the floor. It was there was like bed bugs and fleas and all types of shit all over the place. It was a party house. It was people still up drinking and getting high 6 o'clock in the morning.
So you kind of had to earn your way, even to sleep on a couch.
Oh yeah, I earned my way up to the couch and eventually to a bedroom. I had a bed, but it took a while to get there. And
You end up back in New York ultimately.
yeah,
How's that happen?
Like any good story with a woman. I met some.
Couldn't find one in Florida, huh?
Well, no, that was the problem. I had met one.
So you meet somebody in Florida, you end up back in New York, the pills progress, and you end up in treatment. How did you end up in treatment? And like, what made you get to that point of like, what's that aha moment? Or you hear some people saying, hey, I hit bottom, or like, fill in the blank, Mike. I knew I needed help when.
Yeah, I knew I needed help when I'd been sleeping in my car for over a year, through 2 winters.
Wow.
There wasn't a single family member that would answer my phone call.
Father's a retired police officer.
Yeah.
Brother's an attorney.
Mm-hmm. No one would answer my phone call. Nobody would let me even crash on the couch.
Wow.
There was, to even walk into my mother's house, purses were hidden. Huh. It was serious, and that's when, there was just one day I was in my car and there was a bottle of pills there, and I didn't think they would get me real high, but if I ate all of them, I might die. So
Get to that point of feeling hopeless.
Oh yeah, I was very hopeless. So
How'd you end up in treatment?
I called my father. I reached out to him, and he actually answered the phone.
Wow.
Yeah, he answered the phone, and he said, "Mike, like, what do you want?" And I said, "I need help. I don't know what to do."
Mm-hmm.
So he called 911 from Florida.
Wow.
I had paramedics come to my car. State troopers came first. They met me there. So they took me to the psych ward in Hudson. So I stayed there for about 3 weeks, and then they decided I wasn't that crazy. So they were like, you probably need rehab. And I was like, okay, cool, sign me up. What's rehab?
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea. I had never heard of any of a 12-step fellowship
Right.
or rehab. I had no idea what any of it was. I ended up going to a rehab program, up in Glenville.
So you make a go of it.
Yeah, make a go of it.
Give it a shot.
Give it a shot.
You get out of treatment.
Yep.
Things happen.
Yep.
Things don't happen. And you end up on heroin.
Yes. Again, met another girl when I got kicked out of a program.
Damn, women.
met another girl when I got kicked out of a program. She was an active heroin addict. And
I think that's called the 13th step.
that should be another episode.
Yeah. So you meet up with an active heroin addict who I'm assuming, safe assumption, introduces you to, hey, forget these pills, try this.
Yep.
Okay.
Moved on to the heroin and
Yep.
started the new love affair, the new drug of choice. Going out to Poughkeepsie and getting sizable quantities of heroin, for personal consumption, and bringing it up and selling a little bit and doing most
To
of
support
it.
your own habit.
Of course, yeah. I wouldn't say that I was much of a drug lord or a drug dealer, but I sold.
Somebody
I
that's
sold
got to
to-
do what they got to do to support their own habits so they don't get sick.
I sold to supply my own habit. I also had a full-time job,
So you had a full-time job and had to sell just to support your habit.
Yeah.
Wow. So I'm guessing you end up in treatment again at some point.
Yeah.
And how long ago was that?
This was 3 years ago.
3 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. So you go through treatment.
Yep. Went through treatment. I went through multiple treatments.
Okay.
I went to a few different halfway houses. A few different rehabs. I went to a TC. It all kind of came together at the end for me, which was, now almost 14 months ago.
Wow. Awesome.
And really for me, there was no extravagant bottom at that point. There was no huge loss for me. I had an amazing job. I had a nice house I was living in that I was renting from somebody, and I couldn't stop drinking. I couldn't stop getting high.
Did you just get to the point of, like, I've heard people say, like, they just got sick and tired of being sick and tired?
I think that's what it was.
Okay.
For me.
And you just made that decision of, like, enough is enough.
Yeah, I think the initial decision was, I know I can't do this anymore and I can't do it on my own.
Right.
So I need to do something else. And I went to, I called up the outpatient in that town and that city I was in. And they said, okay, come on in. We're going to try and get you into another treatment. So I went to rehab again. And, it's while I was there is where I really made the decision that, wherever I end up is for the best. It doesn't matter where I go. Like, I'll get sober wherever. It's on me.
So 14 months later, still going strong.
Yes, still going strong.
Let's talk about how it's been since you've been sober in recovery, because I think it's just great. I mean, you're a young person in recovery, and you're doing it.
Absolutely.
Tell me how your life has changed since you've been in recovery, some of the things you're actively engaged in, the Young People's Movement in Recovery, YPR. Talk about that a little bit, and just how it's been for you and how your life has changed, because you talk about going from sleeping on the floor in a house where there's bed bugs to having to sell, to living in your car for 2 years, to 14 months in recovery.
Yeah, my life today is amazing. I really couldn't ask for anything better today. I have a job that is okay. Most things that people take for granted, these are things like they're blessings for me today. I attribute a lot of my sobriety to the Young People's Recovery Movement.
Is there a lot of young people getting sober?
Absolutely. absolutely is a huge increase in young people getting sober today. It's amazing. I see kids come in 15, 16 years old that are sober.
Wow.
I personally have friends that have been sober for 4 or 5 years. I got sober at 15. They're like 19, 20 years old.
So as many as these young people that we see in the news that are overdosing, there's just as many. I know we talked on the ride up here. You're on your way, and I really appreciate you taking the time out before you go. You're on your way to a convention in Rochester tonight.
Yeah.
Where there's going to be 500 to 800 young people in recovery. The hair's sticking up on my arms right now. I mean, these are kids what age range?
This age range of probably 15 to 50.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's the hardest part of staying sober? Has your recovery ever been tested?
Absolutely.
And how do you stay sober? How do you do the next best thing? How do you live life on life's terms? All those things and cliches we hear and one day at a time, has turned into 14 months for you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely been tested. I had a cousin pass away from, a drug overdose several months ago.
You said your sister's still out there.
My sister's still out there. So these things are hard, and the best way that I can put it into perspective for myself is that, I really hope that one day I have, a family member that's struggling reach out to me, because I'm the only person in my family that's sober. I'm the only person in my family that's in recovery, and I can't say any of them need recovery.
Yeah.
But I'm the only one that is in recovery.
I get it, Mike. We always hear about, addiction runs in the family. Addiction, there may be a component to that, but absolutely recovery can run in the family as well. I've seen it firsthand. I've seen fathers and sons get sober. I've seen grandfathers, fathers and grandkids get sober. What advice would you give, Mike? This is your camera right here. What advice would you give to somebody, in particular a young person, that's still sick and suffering? Maybe they haven't gotten to the point where they're sleeping in a car. Maybe they haven't gotten to the point that they're sleeping on the floor in a building with bed bugs. It doesn't have to get that bad. What would be your message to somebody out there that's just experiencing the same struggle that you've experienced to get past it?
I would have to say, just like Dean said, that it's not everybody has the same bottom. It doesn't need to be this huge, extravagant bottom. You don't have to be living, on a floor with bed bugs, with gang members in a trap house. You don't have to be sleeping in a car for over a year through 2 winters. If you experience those feelings of insecurity and loneliness and, just being truly sick and tired of being sick and tired, the best thing you can possibly do is just reach out and ask someone for help. And most anybody knows somebody that's in recovery or can help you get into recovery. So really, schools are huge. If you go to school and you ask a guidance counselor for help, they can point you in the right direction. There are kids that are in high school that go to rehab, and they have schooling in rehab and adolescent facilities. These programs today are phenomenal. The things that they do and the ages that these kids are getting sober now is fantastic.
Mike, thank you so much.
You're
a great role model for young people getting sober.
Thanks, Steve.